Hi everyone, I'm Jason Ballara and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Bethany Finch. Bethany's the remote RV investor and founder of American Made Home Solutions. She has over 27 years founding and running 4 separate companies. I am very excited for this conversation. There's a ton more in this bio that I want to let you tell to the listeners, but first let me just say thank you for coming on the show today. Thank you for taking out the time to share your story. I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you, Jason, for having me. I appreciate it. It's always a tremendous opportunity for us to be able to be a blessing to your audiences. So we're looking forward to that as well.
Well, let's just start with your story, your background. There's a lot here, so I'd love to just kind of hear in your words what's been going on in a very exciting entrepreneur ride. It sounds like.
Oh, well, let's see. I was born in, no,
Back
we,
to the very
we,
beginning.
that's right. No, we don't need to quite go that far back. I actually started, I've been an entrepreneur since I was 10 years old. It was always a way to figure out how to pay bills. I was a foster kid and in and out and had to figure out a way. I wanted to go play sports and I wanted to do things and I needed to figure out how to find money. So I was always hustling, doing something, one thing or another. After I got married and was starting to have kids, I knew I wanted to be home with them. So I started looking at, okay, I need to do some serious businesses that are I still got to pay the bills, right?
Sure.
And I wanted flexibility of time. So I actually at one point had 8 different businesses and they morphed and moved and changed and figured out what I don't want. This is too much of my time and not enough passivity. And I really hate this. Let's fix this. So now we have an executive rental business, which is for corporate travelers. And then we've got that across the country. And then we have our single family renovation business that we do in all of the different markets we're in. We have a multifamily renovation. So we're buying value add properties in multifamily. And then we also have our build to rent, where we're actually building entire communities, but these are single family homes. So think horizontal multifamily
Yeah.
and over 500 of those in the South that we're building as well. And so that's just the initial stages. We just launched our capital fund as well to bring the opportunity for investors. They wanted a little bit more diversity and flexibility. So we just launched that fund. And through there, we have an energy sector. So we have oil and gas that's available to our investors now, as well as notes and debt and whatnot. So yeah, just continuing to be what not only our investors need, but also is continuing to meet those needs of not just meeting the finances, but do I like this? Do I not like this? Is this taking too much time? And am I getting back what I really set out to do? And figuring out what I like and don't like, because I think we're all still figuring that out, right?
Yeah. Every day, every day. Multiple different businesses you're currently running within the space of real estate, so they're kind of adjacent to each other, I guess, if you will. And it sounds like a lot of construction related type of activities. You said you're kind of all over the place in terms of location of yourself, but what markets are you focused on with all of this? Or maybe it's different for each strategy. I don't know.
It is actually because I've been in business over 27 years. Every market has a cycle, right? And it's 10 to 12
Mhm.
years. So depending on which markets are in which cycle as to which ones we're ramping up and scaling back on. And so, for instance, in Washington State in 2020, we liquidated all of our holdings in Washington, reinvested them in our southern states, and we only do executive rentals and flips in Washington State now. In Florida, Texas, Arkansas, Alabama, Louisiana, Tennessee, those ones we're doing our build to rent, as well as our multifamily renovations, as well as our single family flips. We always have our single family flips going on anywhere that we have multifamily renovations, because part of our why is creating opportunities for our tenants. And we have a first time home buyer program, so that if they're 12 months and they've been a good tenant with us, then we'll actually go out, we will find a property that if they go through our financial literacy training, they will get qualified to buy a home. We'll go find one that kind of fits their budget, and then they have to do sweat equity on it with us. And then we basically help move them into their own property.
I think that's a phenomenal, really kind of win all around for you as the investor and builder, and for them as the resident. I think that makes a ton of sense. I've actually never heard that before, so I love it. You mentioned, build to rent, and is that, do you have a preferred strategy, I guess, on the theme of finding what you like and don't like and all of that as you work through your businesses? Do you have a preferred strategy that you seem to like the best, or do you like how they all mix together? I know sometimes we're doing, real estate activities like flipping is a sort of income generation, and then that buy and hold is something to kind of keep your passive income growing. So what do you prefer, I guess? Where are you at in that in that cycle for yourself?
So that's a great question. And I think it can be answered two ways. So, for instance, early on, I figured out that a business can quickly own you instead of you owning
Mm-hmm.
the business. And too many entrepreneurs fail because they just create another job for themselves. And the last thing I needed was one more job. So I had to figure out a way to keep it as a business and yet still provide what I was looking for, which was that passive income and the return of my time. So to do that, I set up our businesses so often that executive rentals cover operations, and
Mm-hmm.
then single family flips create capital to cover payroll. And then anything extra from both of those buckets goes into multifamily long-term investments. And then obviously our multifamily is our legacy growth and our passive income. And so there's small things along the way, right? But that's the big gist of it. And then I
Yeah.
just do my coaching program and things for fun. But we did that. So if our whole goal is to actually reach people and communities, we have to do it in a way that's sustainable. It's not
Mm-hmm.
sustainable if I just go in and I flip one apartment community and then I leave that community and never come back again. So that's never been our goal. Every market that we're in, we're there for the long haul. So we're looking at specific markets. Where can we make an impact? Where can we actually do good and do something and bring something? So we're focused on workforce housing. We don't do custom homes. We don't do, 4,000 square foot homes. We don't do anything. Workforce housing, not affordable housing. There's a difference.
Yeah.
And we're trying to meet the needs. Our country has a huge housing crisis. So we're trying to meet those needs in a way that's real and tangible and quick. So our build to rent product came out of 2020. We launched in 2020. It was to meet the need, right? There, the housing crisis just got substantially 10x because of COVID. So when the only projects that got completed in COVID were custom or like office space of all things, it really hurt that. And the government recognized, oh, whoops, we messed up. We should do something. So they've actually incentivized a lot of new construction and things as well, specifically in the workforce housing, not necessarily custom homes and things. So there's a lot of cities and governments that have actually been coming to us and saying, hey, would you bring this to our market? Would you do this? We've had cities lift building moratoriums just so we could come in and do what we do just to meet that need. Because we can get, if I'm building a 100-unit multifamily building, I have to wait for that whole building to be done to get that certificate of
Yeah.
occupancy. So then it's just sitting there vacant the whole time. But if I'm doing 100 units that are single family, the moment I get one building done, I get that CO, boom, I can put a tenant in. So it's a much quicker delivery to the market, which helps. But it's also zoning wise. A lot of these, we're not in urban areas, right? I'm not in downtown Dallas, but I'm going where all the growth is going so that we're in that path of progress. So we've been in that path of progress so that when we're finished, it's already there, right? So
Yeah.
again, I've been in the business long enough. I know markets, I know cycles, I know timelines. Everything about real estate is historical. There's data everywhere. So we also look at the city governments and the state governments map out 5, 10, even 20-year plans. If you just pay attention to that, you know exactly what's going to be happening and where it's going. So that's what we've done is we've just capitalized on all of our experience and said, okay, let's work smarter, not harder. Let's do things that matter and do it in a way that can not just value add to our bank accounts and our investors' bank accounts, but to our communities. And even Warren Buffett got on the bandwagon as well. I don't know if you've seen that or not. He's now in build to rent, but he's coming on with
Yeah.
a whole different strategy. He's coming on to, hmm, let me buy out one of the worst companies out there and let me value add that business and take them over. So that's what he's doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that yeah, that sounds like a Warren Buffett thing to do. Do it
Right?
one step above of what
Right.
other people are
Everybody
doing
else's.
for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's sort of a brilliant strategy. I want to ask you more about build to rent, but you did say something that I want to I don't want to skip over. You said workforce housing and affordable housing are not the same thing. Define that for us. Let people know, kind of why you, because I do think that's something, those are terms that get thrown around and maybe people don't understand, or maybe, people have different ideas of what that means. But tell us kind of your take on that and expand on that comment a little bit.
Yeah, so many folks misunderstand that. And honestly, it comes from real estate agents. They're the ones falsely promoting things. People naturally filter through what they know. So, what they know, affordable housing means I can afford it. That doesn't matter what their income is. That's just what they, in their mind, automatically assume. And then realtors just run with that and just blow it out of proportion. So, affordable housing is actually a government term. So,
Okay.
it's a term that is linked with Section 8 and it's linked with mandates of incomes. So, for instance, it'll determine the median income for an area, and then it'll determine, okay, so if this area's income median is 60,000, anybody who makes less than 20,000 is what we're going to consider poverty level. And that poverty level, then the government says that's affordable housing. So it's based on that poverty level or 50% of median income, right along that line. So it's a much lower, where the median income is where workforce housing is. So that's if I move to Los Angeles and the median income in that area is $85,000 and that's my income, what can I afford to pay for my housing, which should be 30% of your income? That's workforce housing. It's whatever that market can afford based on the wages that market is providing. So one's a government term based on poverty level, affordable housing. The other one is a market term based on what the market can support and afford.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an important distinction. I think people, sometimes people will say, "Oh, we're providing workforce housing," or we're like use them interchangeably. And I think it
Mhm.
is important for people to understand that affordable housing is essentially, you don't get to define that. That's defined by the government. So,
Right.
sure, workforce housing, totally fine. Um, so let's dig in on build to rent and kind of what is associated with that. You already touched on a little bit in the sense that as you finish one, you can kind of move through and get those certificate of occupancy. The idea is you've got multiple single family houses within a space. T- Talk to me about how you structure those communities. Like, just a bunch of houses?
Yeah.
Are you adding amenities? Is there, shopping
Yeah.
type things associated with it? How do you see that?
Great question. Great question. So, our very first community, one of the biggest things that we learned in COVID, remember, we launched in COVID. So, one of the things we learned is nobody wanted to be stuck in their apartment with their three kids and they're both stuck at home and everybody's on Zoom calls. It was chaos and everybody hated it, right? So, the first thing people did was they immediately tried to find a way to get out of their apartments. So, you saw a massive influx of people buying houses or renting houses. So the market quickly dictated, we want to be in a house. We don't want to be in an apartment. So our very first one we built single family homes that simple, like 11, 1200 square foot homes, but they also have backyards. So people still want their pets. That's usually a big issue back and forth, right? So we put them inside of a gated community. So you still have a community feel, right? But you pretty much have the exact same floor plan throughout. So it streamlines building on our end. But we did provide amenities. So we have dog parks. Some of our properties will have pools. Some of them will have clubhouses and big barbecue areas. Some of them, many of them will have smart home integrations and things like that that are capable. Um, Weight rooms and or fitness centers. just like a multifamily would have and you would usually see. That's what you're going to typically see on these. So you get the benefits of living in your own house, but you get all the amenities that come with, someone else is mowing that lawn, someone else is, taking care of when something breaks, things like that. So it's kind of a win-win in that area for sure. And then just have a yard for your pets and things like that. That's phenomenal. Many, many folks are just latching onto that. A lot of this younger generation has decided they would rather rent and pay a premium to rent and then own rentals that somebody else is paying the mortgage on. We're seeing a big trend in that area too.
Yeah, I think that specific strategy of sort of renting maybe a little bit longer in your own life before you decide to buy your own home, and then using that, essentially it's smart, right? Like, set yourself up with assets ahead of time so that you can, or sort of ahead of time before you take on those big life purchases. Now you have the ability to let your assets pay for your, I guess, personal
Lifestyle.
liabilities. So that's a very smart strategy in providing a place for people to kind of be where they have all the things they might like in a home, but not being tied into a 30-year mortgage. And I once heard, it was an interesting quote, I hadn't heard it before, but I once heard someone talk about, basically, if you are renting, then your rent is your maximum monthly payment, but if you own a home, your mortgage is your minimum monthly payment. So something that people don't maybe always consider when they're looking at whether they want to buy or rent is kind of some of those little surprise expenses you might run into as a homeowner, don't always get accounted for. So this is a really nice middle ground, that sort of build to rent strategy.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, if I knew knew, what I know now, if I knew back then, right, life would have been completely different. We're always looking at it like that. But I think this younger generation, they're doing some good things. And what they're
Mm-hmm.
doing is they're really rethinking, well, why do I want to own a home? And what's the point? I don't want to do all this work. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this.
Right.
So they're creating a better lifestyle for themselves. And in
Yeah.
doing so, they're being smart, right? They're capitalizing on their 401ks, and then they're taking out a loan on their 401k, and then they're buying a property somewhere else, that they can afford, not necessarily where they want to live or anything like that, but just that they can get into a rental. They're putting a tenant in there. That tenant is paying all of the rent and covering expenses and a little buffer, but they're not touching the rest of it. That way it can cover any expenses and things that come up. But then when they do 5, 10 years down the road, okay, I'm ready to get married, I'm ready to settle down. Now they're pulling home equity lines of credit, or they're selling those properties to pay for the home they want to live in. And now they can afford it because now they have a down payment and somebody else has paid all that money for it, right? I mean, it's very, very smart, and there's a lot to be said about learning from the next generation, right? And learn from the generation ahead of me and go, I need to be in real estate, right? That's where all the wealth is made. But I can also learn and recognize sometimes strategies change generationally.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a couple of really cool things, like, to tie all this together. One is essentially what we, people talk about investing in real estate, and kind of that freedom that it gives you. And I think you alluded to it in terms of finding which businesses fit your, do the things you want to do. And so essentially what we're trying to create is lifestyle freedom. And it's what, that's what we're talking about here with people deciding to rent a little bit longer, is set yourself up for lifestyle freedom now, but also, kind of in the future, and not have, I think so many times big decisions are made because we have to, not because we want to necessarily. And
Sure.
it's like, if you have a little bit of forethought and planning, and put some, time and effort into some of this stuff at an early age, not even age, just earlier, and start,
Right.
kind of work. It doesn't really matter, because that it's not too late if you're not 20, right? Like, it's just, you just need to think about these things and think about how it looks in the future. So you're looking for that lifestyle freedom. And that's the same thing if you decide to, whether it's work for someone, or or you start a business, you're looking for that. You're trying to find what fits into how you want your life to look, and don't just look at the numbers. And that's,
Right.
that's kind of like a lot of, I mean, my experience, like when I moved into real estate more full time, in the sense that, oh, I want, that financial freedom and all that. It's actually, so far, all there is more lifestyle freedom, because in the beginning, you're not going to make necessarily a ton of money. Like real estate is a get rich slow thing. So in the beginning, you still got to figure out a way for money to come in the door and pay bills and all of that. But
Hmm.
I don't work for anyone else, and
Right.
so it's on me. Like all the effort I put in is for me and my family and my investors, and it's not, so it is definitely a lifestyle related scenario when you're that's the way you should kind of look at it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think too, always being ahead, recognizing, finding your niche. Our niche has always been workforce housing, 100%. Um, there's tons of money that can be made in custom homes. There's tons of money that can be
Mhm.
made in vacation rental, right? It's meeting the upper class of folks who can afford to travel. It's meeting folks that can afford to do all these things, but that's not where the big gap is, right? So
Right.
for me, I'm like, I don't want to work that hard to get, a little bit more. It just doesn't make sense. And our goal is always to create what's sustainable, right? If they keep creating a bigger and bigger and bigger divide, that's not going to be sustainable. The one's going to go away, right? We're going to lose that middle class altogether. So someone's got to stop the gap. Someone's got to stop and step in and go, we have to do something different. And Build to Rent gives many of our investors not only an opportunity to be a part of that, but to make a difference in a real way in communities. When you've got cities who are desperate to have builders come and do something that's going to meet a need for them, you're creating real change and you're providing a quality product that is going to last. So then it also meets the needs too, because even that upper class investors, right? Those institutionals that they've been catering to us from day one. Why? Because they want what we're doing. Now, we may not sell it. We may keep it. Many of ours will actually keep. Some of them we will sell just because it makes sense, right? Same thing. You got to pay the bills. You do this, you do this. We
Yeah.
want to give great returns to our investors, but part of those great returns is those long-term returns, right? The monthly cash flow coming in once they're stabilized, and then that long term, all the depreciation that they're gaining on their investments early on. And then long term wise, the longer we hold them, that's just free money to them. They've gotten all
Mhm.
their principal back and they're just
Yeah.
reinvesting it in other projects. And it's just continuing to, again, sustainable growth, right?
Great point. Interesting. I don't know. This like topic has come up repeatedly for me over the last week, but was on a call with Ken McElroy, and he talked about
Sure.
something that I had never, like. We all talk about financial freedom, and it's generally in relation to our selves, our family, the sort of close knit, or maybe even our investors. But he talked about financial freedom for your business, right? So many people, we start businesses and essentially just create more jobs for ourselves, and you're kind of tied up in that, and it's like, oh, how am I, I got to, now I have employees, I got to pay those employees and all that. And he was saying, when you start a business, in whether that's in real estate or anything, like you first need to, or maybe not first, but you want to look at it like, how, as you said, how do I make, how do I create sustainability here? Like, how do I make it so that my business can continue to grow? Because at the end of the day, like, as a business owner, your capacity only stretches so far. You just can't keep
You
going
only have
with
so
it. And
many
so,
hours in the day, just like
right,
everybody else,
right,
right?
right. Yeah. So it's like, I guess, if you can do away with sleep, you can, do things to maybe make your day a little bit longer, but
Yes, the less I can do away with my sleep. So no, that's not. So my goal is to get
right.
to where I'm no more than 15 hours a week in the businesses. And that's because, we're focused on a lot of disaster recovery. We're focused on reaching our communities for Christ. And we're doing that with hands-on efforts. And I would rather spend my time doing that
Yeah.
than the day-to-day operations of running the business, this and that. So as a founder, our mindset should always be, and Ken and I have actually talked about this many times, it should always be to get ourselves out of the business,
Mhm.
get it handed off, get somebody else
Yep.
who loves operations, who loves this, right? We start it, we get it rolling, but then they're the ones that are going to take it to the next level. And, that's kind of the whole point. Again, sustainable growth, right? Somebody who's in a different sphere, in a different phase, in a different scenario, for sure.
As you age, I guess, you get some of the physical parts of like being an entrepreneur, and I don't mean like an entrepreneur that lifts things up all the time, like or working directly in construction. It's just the long days, long hours, sort of juggling a lot of balls in the air, trying to keep everything straight. It just gets harder to do, I think, too, and certainly people run businesses well into their Warren Buffett, we were talking, he's 80 something, right?
Right?
uh I think he's like 84. So I mean, but I would bet you that Warren Buffett does not work more than, maybe it's the 15 hours a week. Like he's not, he's built a team and systems and all of this around him to make it sustainable after he's gone. And it's just kind of one of those things that I think a lot of people don't think about that piece. What's the exit strategy? And you know, that's why, I mean, we're hearing about it all the time now. Baby boomers, they're all getting to retirement age, and those of them that have businesses, some of them are just closing the business because they don't have any real exit strategy or plan of succession to their children. Maybe their children don't want it, whatever
The
it is.
kids
But
don't
it's just
even want it usually. Yeah.
right. So it's just like you thought, oh, I'm going to do this thing, work hard forever, and I'll say like it's better probably, even if I think you create yourself a job. It's not the best thing, but it's maybe better than putting all that work in for someone else in the long term. But still, the idea is maybe thinking one step further is how do I get to that point of where I'm, kind of working myself out of that job and then doing the things I want to, whether that's for recreation or impact, like trying to give back to communities, like you said. I want to switch gears so I don't keep you all day, but basically, I like to ask every guest 4 questions. And the first one is based on the name of the show being Know Your Why. And so, what is your why, Bethany? And I think that we've talked a little bit about some of this here, but maybe want to give you the chance to expand on it and let people know sort of what you're trying to accomplish in the world.
Sure, sure. So our why is to create sustainable growth in every single market that we're in. We do this with 3 ways: by reaching families for Christ, by financial literacy, and by financial empowerment, not just financially, but in time, because time has a value and we forget
Mm-hmm.
that. So that's not just our residents, but it's also our team members. It's also many other businesses that we're partnering with in those communities. It's finding a way to show them how to get their time back and do it in a way that's tangible and real.
Yeah, yeah, and I would say, I would maybe argue that time is a far more valuable resource than money at this point. Just you realize the importance of it. Eventually, we run out of time, so there's you
Right? Well, the
roll
government
that.
can't print more of it, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, you roll that mortality piece in there, and it gets very, very important. Well, tell us something about yourself that maybe isn't common knowledge. Special skill, a hobby, anything that you're comfortable sharing to let the listeners know you a little bit better.
So, my blog, the Diary of a Remote RV Investor, is all about. Some folks don't know I'm 100% remote, and we did that in 2020 because the airlines and everybody was shutting down. No, you got to do this, and no, you got to do that, and we did not like somebody else telling us what we could and couldn't do. So, unfortunately, I actually have a lung tumor, and I cannot wear a mask. It actually would make it way worse for me. So the pilot, I flew all COVID, no mask, all the airports, nothing. And the pilot left the seat and was going to eject me off the plane in October. So it went almost the whole year before someone finally
Yeah.
approached about it. And my husband just looked over at me. He said, "Never going to ask you this again. Would you put your mask on?" And by the time we landed, he was already starting to find RVs. He was like, we're done. I'm never going to ask you to endanger your life because somebody else is afraid. So we need to find a different solution. And within a month, we had an RV and we traveled the country, going to not just our different markets, but other markets we're checking out. Or I've got a big family, so family throughout the country. And for us, it's also like my husband loves the fact that if it's tornado weather, we can take off. We're not stuck
Right,
there.
right. Yeah. Yeah, a big snowstorm coming through, you're like, we don't want to stick around in
Time to
this.
go.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. So the blog is all about all the different many adventures that happen when you're on the road and all those things and how that works.
and so just full time living in an RV.
Yep,
Yeah. I mean, I think it would take some getting used to, but I also know
it does.
there's some really nice RVs out there. So like from a
Yes.
comfort standpoint, I don't think it would be terrible.
No, it's pretty
Yeah.
comfortable as far as that
Right.
goes. I mean, if John Madden did it for how many years, I'm pretty sure
Right.
we'll do just fine.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We'd like to do something like that with our kids. Just like get an RV
Yeah.
for a summer and just show them the country, be around. And from a work standpoint, the Wi-Fi on planes is better now, but it's somewhat unreliable. Like, but you can work with a mobile hotspot if you're traveling from an RV standpoint. You'd be able to work pretty comfortably to do just about everything you need to do that way. So I think it's a really nice idea.
Yeah, things have definitely changed for as far as that goes.
Last question for you, Bethany. What piece of advice would you give to someone who is starting out in real estate? They hear this, they're inspired by your journey, and they're just not sure what steps to take first.
Um, I would probably say one of the best things that I did that made a difference that I noticed all the others around me and what the difference between me being successful and them not. I just got out there and did something. I wasn't
Mm.
out to perfect everything. I learned from other people's mistakes. I was willing to spend money on education. I was willing to go to events and talk with people and what about this and how this and then the best coach I ever had told me something that was literally transformative to my business. And they said, 10% of all the deals you do in a year, you're going to bring money to the table. So basically, with my sports analogy brain, she literally said, look, it's not always going to be a home run. Sometimes you're going to flat out strike out. Other times
Mm.
you're going to get base hit. And if we're always going into it with the expectation of everything's going to be a home run, we're always setting ourselves up for failure. And I stopped using the whole word failure. It's not even in our business at all. People aren't allowed to say that because failure is simply an opportunity to learn. And why are we considering it a failure? Oh, I didn't hit that goal. So, did you get further than you were yesterday or the day before?
Yeah.
So, recognizing, don't set yourself up for failure by using terminology and words. Just get out there and start doing. I was willing to do stuff. I've got some every learning lesson has a price tag. And the bigger the price tag, usually those are the ones we remember the most, right? So I've got one that's an $85 million one. I have another one that's a $85,000 one, right? So, and each one of them, those lessons, I don't forget, right? And so there's value in every single one.
Yeah, it is fantastic advice, and I actually love that, like 10% that 10% of the deals you do, you're going to bring money to it. One of my biggest fears, I guess, about kind of what has happened with the economy right now is like real estate was like a very hot topic. Then the interest rates went up, people got afraid, and there have been some deals that have struggled. One of my biggest fears is that means like people that happen to invest in a deal that is struggling just stop investing because
Right.
now you've only experienced the bad. Like
Right.
there are going to be some bad, but as you said, 10% is a pretty good number. Like if 90% of them are good deals, but if you do one and it turns out to be the deal that doesn't go well, now that's all you have. And so you have to kind of keep going and like recognize that, failure is not really a thing unless we stop.
Right. Well, and honestly, some of the deals that I thought for sure were going to be failures, and it's 2 a.m. and I'm bawling my eyes out because I'm feeling like I'm going to lose all this money and it's going to hurt my family and hurt the business. And those ended up turning out to be some of the most profitable ones because it forced me to do something different. It forced me to
Yeah.
dig in and go, okay, well, this
Yeah.
strategy is not working. What can I change? What can I do? And had I not gone through that, I never would have. I would have stayed on that path. And just like you said, I would have lost money. And then I might have even thrown up my hands and said, oh, I'm done. This is pointless. And
Yeah.
so many times, just because I've stuck through things and I've gotten water under the bridge and that movement has kept going, it's made a big difference. And I saw so many other investors starting at the same time I did, and they're nowhere to be found. And it's not because I was, so much smarter than them or anything. I was just willing to keep going and keep trying and keep figuring it out. And, some people learn to swim by jumping in the deep end, right? Other people learn to swim on the side and a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
Everybody's different.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is a Michael Jordan quote. I think uh, I never lost a game. I just ran out of time.
Right.
And I feel like that's like one of the best sports quotes I've ever heard that applies to real estate, right? Because it's like you just got to hang in. That's it. Like you're gonna
Yeah.
have downtimes. You just got to hang in, and speaks to the long term success of real estate as a whole. Um, Bethany, this was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your story. I think people are going to get a ton of value out of it. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Hope there was some good value for your guests as well.
I'm sure. Folks listening, I know you're going to get a ton out of this episode. Please like, rate, and review the show so we can get more great guests like Bethany. And thank you all for listening.